Good evening. I'm going to start with introductions. I'm Lori Hansen, high school principal.
I'm Kelsey Shore. I am a parent in the district. I have a first grader and a third grader at Pinewood.
I'm Scott Hill. I'm just a citizen here in town.
Tina Burkholder, Director of Business Services at Monticello Schools, and I have 2 kids in the middle school.
Jamie Sieben, I'm on the school board. I also have 2 kids. My one son has graduated and through the system already, and then my daughter's an 8th grader in the middle school.
Casey Root, board member. I have 3 kids in the district, 2 at Pinewood and 1 in the middle school.
Awesome. Eric Olson, superintendent, and I've had the pleasure of being in this position for 8 years and a principal for 13 years in the district.
My name is Sarah Welk, and I'm our Director of Student Services here. I was at the middle school for 18 years as a school social worker, district social worker for 5, and then currently just the Director of Student Services in my 2nd year.
What's that? Yeah, we'll just make sure everybody has a connection to our flyer that really will be a big piece of what we'll be talking about. We have a presentation that doesn't mirror that, but it's the exact same information. So, Gavin, you want to just advance for us? It's there we go. All right. So we just want to talk a little bit about who we are. We have a lot of people who have connections to the district, but some of the connections are current and some are maybe recent. And so who we are as a district, I think it's really important for us to be able to share what we've been building, and especially at the high school. And I think no better person to talk about the high school than a outstanding high school principal, Ms. Hansen. Talk a little bit about what we have been trying to do there.
Good evening, and thanks for coming. And so I think my goal is just to give a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what's happening at the high school. So for those that don't know, we're a 912 building. I was just looking at that, and that's just a really great snapshot of many of the diverse programming, and I'll use the words pathways, that we have going on at Monticello High School. So our goal, we know that we have educated our career or our college-bound kids very, very well historically. I think what we've recognized in the last handful of years is that we have not served all of our students as well as we should be acknowledging and recognizing. And when I say that, I'm going to talk that we had a strong track for our 4-year college-bound kids. We provided tremendous opportunities. We built strong pathways. Many, many kids walked out with many college credits that helped them transfer and alleviate tuition debt, eliminate years off of college, got them on a track to whatever they were going to look at for post-secondary. In the last 5 to 6 years, I think what we've done, we've recognized is that we need to serve all of our students a little bit more comprehensively. The 2-year college-bound kid, the 2-year tech-bound kid, the kid that's going to go right into the workforce, the kid that's going to go to military. We've looked at what we're doing internally. We worked with our community partners, with businesses. We've listened to many, many different organizations and groups to say, what is it that we can do to better serve our students and get them prepared for when they walk across that stage in post-secondary education? What's our opportunities? And so I think that's truly what we've been trying to do. When you look up there, that captures many, many things. I will talk specifically to the high school, but that's the top right corner. That picture right there is our middle school 7th and 8th grade STEM. That's a direct feeder and a pipeline to that career pathway, that college pathway that we're trying to develop for kids in our building. So they get firsthand exposure, experience in working real world, all sorts of modules that gives them some life into what education and engagement, what that can be. And then when they come into high school, we start to talk pathways, who you are, not just what do you want to be, but what does that look like to come through our schools, our programming, and our offerings, and kind of gain some traction. It's very personal to me, and I have two very different kids. One graduated 3 years ago, one graduated last year. I think they're good examples of what we're trying to do for 1,400 students in that building. I have a junior that's at Concordia right now, and she walked out of Monticello High School with over 36 college credits. Had she been thoughtful about her parents, what that would have done is wiped $20,000 off of tuition, and she could have graduated in 3 years. She's going to stay at her college, add a double major, add a minor, and she's going to round out her professional skill set so that she lands where she wants to be. That's the right track for her. I had a son that had a little bit different track. He was going to say, I'm engineering from day one. He was engineering systems. He went and did a job shadow at 3M and came back and said, I'm not engineering systems. That doesn't speak to me. And he went through our manufacturing program. He went through our engineering courses. He started to kind of backtrack a little bit of what he was doing and said, you know what, I might want to be a small business owner. I might want to be an electrician. That's where he landed right now. So he is at a 2-year community and tech college. He still had over 20 college credits that took off tuition from that 2-year AA degree. So his tuition bill went down, and now he's in an electrician's track that he can say Monticello gave him opportunities in manufacturing, in real-world experiences, and internships that pushed him to feel like this is the right place for him. That right there is just capturing. So we've done that and tried to make our manufacturing more robust. We've implemented a healthcare pathway field. We've held a healthcare field pathway. We've got a very strong FACS program. We brought in ag and FFA, if you take a look in the lower left-hand corners of it. We've got strong programs that we're really trying to look at internships, work experiences, work-based learning, youth programs where our kids are getting real-world experience that triangulate core content, technical skills, and what we call vital skill development, because that's what we know our community, our business partners, our parents are telling us. My personal story is just really relevant to me and to my husband and I's checkbook, but that's really what we're trying to do for every kid that has come through it. That right there captures many, many things in how we're trying to educate students differently and what that can look like, that how we set them up to really go forward and past high school. Do they have an idea, and do they have the skills to launch that idea? That's a big snapshot. That's a lot of narrative right there. But I think it speaks to who we are at Monticello High School.
As we transition here to maybe talking a little bit about the finances and how that's going to lead into November 4th, one of the transition points that I would like to make is while they've been developing the pathway programs, they haven't been adding staff to teach the, content areas maybe that we didn't have. What they've been doing is pushing their staff to make sure that they have a deposit of classes in the bank, and they've all had to dig deep into new proposals and making sure that we're not in the social studies department just teaching current events for decades, that they might be teaching a leadership class, they might be teaching a forensic class, but doing things that kids are interested and engaged about, and that's what we've been trying to build. And so that leads into the finances, because I don't want you to hear Ms. Hanson of all the things that we've added. Those aren't adding just per se positions. They're making sure that we make all of our staff members more valuable and have a bank of classes to help them diversify. If you can go ahead, Gavin. So hopefully tonight this is all about providing clear and factual information, explain what levy funds are and why they're needed, talk about revenue sources and spending, review ballot language and tax impact, because that's really important for our community and all of our citizens to understand, share voting details, and while we remain neutral, our role is absolutely to inform and make sure that you walk away here feeling valued and that your questions were answered. Thanks, Gavin. Oh, if just to dig into what is an operating levy, so then I'm going to tee it up for Tina, and she's going to take us on a little journey here about our financial situation. But revenue sources, for me, I like to break this down into a simple algebra problem. And since we're talking general fund, and that's what's going to be affected by this operating levy vote, is really A plus B equals C. There are two revenue sources that affect our general fund, and the two revenue sources are state aid per pupil, and we get between $7,000 and $8,000 per pupil, and that's the main source. That really, by rights, you hope would fund education, and unfortunately, it doesn't to many to most districts across the state. And so then the other revenue source that you can have for your operating levy is B, which is a voter-approved levy. We currently have $775 on the books for this year, and we'll let the board members talk in a few slides here about the big decision that they had to make with that current dollar amount. Equals our total revenue sources that we have coming into our district. Our total revenue sources right now have us at 283rd out of 331 districts. And so those are no control of ours, either of those two things. They are obviously the what is palatable for voters in the revenue source B, and then the A revenue sources generated by state pupil aid are different across the state, and that can be hard for us, but that is why we advocate down at the Capitol for equitable finances across the state, so that we don't have to travel 30 miles and see sometimes a $3,000 and $4,000 difference per student. That's the hard to understand. So we'll continue to do our job and get down there and make sure our voice is heard, and hopefully there can be maybe some reprieve at the state sometime. We don't count on it, and that's why we have to go for the voter-approved levy so that we can maintain what we have. So a levy is just to bridge the gap between what's supposed to be funded and when it's not, the voter-approved levy bridges that gap. This is a slide that, as you get around the community, we'll have had 70 different presentations throughout the 2 months. But you'll hear things like, what's going on in Monticello schools? How can there be financial challenges when the community is growing? I hear the administrative costs are too much. Didn't they just build the Monticello High School stadium? Is it a black hole? And they must mismanage their money, are all things that I've heard for years. And I will tell you that as a principal, I never understood the finances like I do now. I wish I would have, because you just look at the educational system really different, and we have had to make a lot of cuts over my 21 years here, but now I understand why. And one of the reasons why is that our enrollment, if you look at 2 decades worth of enrollment, we're right back where we were in 2003. And so a lot was happening in the community in the early 2000s. A lot of neighborhoods were being built, and the growth model at that time was a little bit more rapid. And then now we've been in a slow growth model from the city. And I'm not complaining. It just is one of the challenges that we've had. If one of your main revenue sources is state aid, and that state aid has been either a slow, steady growth or back to a decline, it's hard to get over some of those revenue challenges. So we're going to just tell you and tee it up that it's not spending problem. In fact, we've even printed some things for you to take so that you can see. Right, I have a graph up there. And then we also want you to see how we compare to the state average in our administrative costs. And so our administrative costs are listed on the sheet that we're passing out. And that's where I'm going to tee it up and let Tina talk about those.
All right. So this slide is a graph from our 2024 audit. This is a breakdown of all of our spending for 2 years ago. And we're in the process of finishing up last year. Hopefully our auditors will have their presentation ready for us in November 17th. So I don't expect you to read the numbers. I just wanted to highlight Those two bars have our administrative costs, so they're very skinny slices of the pie chart. We have spending over 75% of our expenses on student or student support services. There's regular instruction, vocational instruction, or that is the CTE, career tech education categories, special ed, community ed, instructional support services, which is kind of our technology department, our student support services, pupil support services, that's our counselors, our health services, our nurses. So over 75% of our funds goes towards kids, and the rest of it, like I said, is admin, or it's buildings and grounds with capital outlay projects and our debt service. The next slide has, again, I don't expect you to read the chart, but the boxes that I highlighted were those instructional or instructional support categories. That you can see those bars are a large piece of our pie, just shown a different way. It has 4 years of information there. So you can see we are on a consistent basis of spending towards kids. And then the next slide has that administrative costs. The auditors put our admin costs, they compare it to the state average, which is that yellow bar. And then the blue bar is school districts that are 4,000 students or more. So for the last 3 years that it's showing, we are below the average in those that are our size or larger when it comes to admin costs. All the schools have a uniform financial accounting system where we all have to code the same way. We have to code our principals the same way. We have to code my position the same way, our buildings and grounds, community ed. So this is how we look at ourselves with other districts, and the state average, they're always a year behind because we as school districts have to submit our financial data to them by November 30th of each year after the year's over. So it takes a lot for them to compile all 300 schools and get that information out. So like what we've been talking about, it's not a spending problem, it's truly a revenue problem. And the next slide has kind of what Mr. Olson was talking to earlier, how we are ranked very low when we look at over 300 school districts. We're ranked 283rd when you look at the state aid and the property tax levy coming in. Granted, schools get, participation fees with activities, gate and all that, but that's just a sliver. When you just look at the state aid and the levy portion, we rank low. And our operating question that's on the ballot, if it passes, that just gets us maybe up a couple spots. Right now, Big Lake is 224 out of the ranking, so we might hit that mark. So it's not like we're going to move in the top 5, top 10. We're just going to move up the grid a little bit, still in the lower third of the schools.
It doesn't pass. I think it's important to know our history. Like I've mentioned, I do think the school district has had to make reductions, and a lot of that is is just because of the revenue over the years. No mismanagement at any juncture of the history of the school district. We tightened our belts last year. We did a $2 million reduction. Funny thing is, when I drove through St. Cloud and heard their radio station, they were talking about 2 schools up there going through $500,000 budget reductions, and we did $2 million, and the community doesn't even know. We are blue-collar, humble people, and we put the work on our backs and all of our employee groups have felt it, but we really probably didn't talk about it enough. I'm proud to say that we weathered that storm as keeping the cuts away from the classroom as best we could during the 2 million cuts. We still have decent class sizes. We haven't hit the class sizes except for a couple blips. We have one grade level at one of our elementaries that is a pass where we would like, but everything else is in a spot that is okay. We are slated for another $2 million of cut this year. And so that's why we need to tell our story, and we need to get out to stop the bleeding that could be coming on the backside of that second $2 million reduction, which would be a $6 million reduction. in any school district or any business that has to go through $10 million reduction when your budget is just almost $60 million, we would feel it, and so would the whole community. The community would feel it because anytime you reduce that many staff members, we are 80% of our budget is staff, so there's no way around it the next time around, and or the $6 million that would loom if it failed. And so people would be cut, and the very programs that Ms. Hanson talked about would all be in jeopardy. Everything that's happened over the course of history, we have to look back in time, how has the district been able to run? And so if you go to our website, you'll see some possibilities. We're not saying anything is a definite, because when you're looking out 2 years, there's a lot of things that do come into play, but the forecast model is showing the 2 that we've already done, which was painful, the 2 that we're going to be in the midst of this budget cycle, and then the 6 the year after. Losing some of those programs and teachers and having higher class sizes, having higher fees for families would all be a definite impact. So all of these things up here would be impacted, and they're all things that the board would have to make some tough decisions on. I'll just pause there and just make sure that everybody understands. I've mostly talked about teachers and support staff and talked about that reduction and what that would do, and we would have higher class sizes across the district. Athletics and clubs, if we just did our simple math, out of the general fund, we support activities, after-school activities for the high school to the tune of $1 million. And so each year we have about 1,000 participants. And so if you take that $1 million and divide it by 1,000, if the board wants to make budget neutral decisions, they could ask the families to pay for the full activity, which would then mean a $1,000 activity fee to break even. And I think knowing that my kids are 25 and 27 and knowing that they went through the youth sports are expensive, but when kids finally get to the high school level, families usually get a little bit of reprieve, and that's well needed. Activities for us right now are only $275 per activity, and we would like to keep them and keep the cost down, and we would be able to keep them down. This levy is all about sustaining everything that we have, not adding. Technology and training, a lot of the technology and training that we have are for security reasons. And in this day and age, having those systems for, the student identity and having security systems for cybersecurity is really important. Kids can make good decisions in digital system, and then they can also be exposed to making poor decisions. And we want to have the safety measures in there that protects kids from all different sides of life. And then like innovative programs and anything that the district has recently done would be on the table. So Eastview is one of the places dear to my heart because I got to open it as principal 9 years ago. And it's a place for the early learner to really develop their leadership skills. 3 to 5, 6-year-olds coming together in one place is great for the teachers to have strong cohort and collegiality and to really have all your resources be aligned in one spot for those early learners. But we know that if our enrollment is the same as 2003, we could fit kindergarten and preschool back in all the buildings and rent that out like a former board made the decision to do. And so we're just looking at all things that have been done before as possibilities. So anything you see right now, there is no decisions that have been made. These are all just things that we have to look at and prepare for. And then safety and transportation, we have some dangerous roads that we would never have kids cross, so we would not increase the walking distance. But the things that we could do is we could decrease the service. Last year, the school board held my my feet to the fire and work with the transportation company to make sure that we got all of our students under that hour that says by contract and policy. And that took, with the bridge being out and with the school start time changes that we're very proud of and very happy with, but it did take us until about the end of October till we have all those fixed. And right now, I've only had one call on knock on wood on transportation this whole year. So we're really proud of the gains that we've made. So the decision to more align school start times rather than having the big gap, we're starting to experience the efficiencies and effectiveness of transportation being at a good level. And so losing that quality of service would be the thing that we'd have to look at. Gonna tee it up.
Yep. This slide talks a little bit about the tax impact, but maybe prior to us talking about that, Jamie or Casey, do you want to talk about the board's decision and how we came up to the amount we did and why we're coming to the voters this November?
Sure. I'll start and then you can
that's
just
fine. I'll
jump in.
over, yeah.
We had a difficult decision to make as a board on how we were going to move forward financially. So because the state recognizes that we don't get funded exactly how schools should be funded, we have a one-time opportunity to renew our current operating levy. And so that was the bucket of money that Superintendent Olson was saying is that $700 that when you look at how we rank overall for our total funding, we're losing. We're losing in that game of how are we standing up next to other Minnesota towns in terms of education and investing into our students and our future. And so we could renew that, knowing that it still wouldn't be enough to sustain our current services. Knowing that's even after we did the $2 million last year, we're doing $2 million this year in cuts, which is going to impact and the students will feel it this next year, right? With just that $2 million. If we renewed, it still doesn't sustain our current offerings and what we have right now for our current students. And so what we decided to do is our budget committee went back and figured out how much it would cost to sustain our current offerings that we currently have within our school districts and basically keep a status quo for our offerings and how much we would need to ask our taxpayers for to sustain us for 5 years. And so that's what we as a board decided to vote on was what was going to be the best case scenario, because we understand our community's going through price increases just like all of us. And the school district is not unique to not be experiencing those same cost inflations as we are within our homes as well. And so we didn't want to ask for anything more, but we wanted to ask for exactly what we need to sustain us. And so like Tina said, it's not going to jump us up to being, top 10 in Minnesota. We're not asking that. We're just asking for enough to sustain us at this point. And so that's where we unanimously voted on what our school district needs to sustain our current offerings.
Yeah, and to add on that, the other part of the choice was if we decided to renew it, we were making a decision without the voters' input, really. Like the public voted for referendum for X amount of time, and we would have taken that vote away from the public, which we didn't think was the right thing to do. We wanted the public involved. We wanted you guys informed on there, which is why we put the vote out to the public. One of the questions that comes up is, if it doesn't pass, can we go back and change anything? No, not this time. Everything's out there right now. When we look at the price, when you break it down to about your $350,000 home, you have about $25 a month. So even though there's a tax that's applied today, and when you see the ballot, the wording, we'll go over that a little bit, the wording's a little bit wonky on how it says it goes back to, takes everything away, then adds it back on. But in that experience there is a function of your home value, and on the right is just the delta of what you would see based on your home. So when you break it down, that's really a per month cost. And, there's two ways of looking at it. One is for that amount, we're supporting the community, all the students. The students get to experience all these other classes, which actually propel them further in life, show them a lot more opportunities, things that they maybe have not ever been interested in. And another aspect too is that, if it doesn't pass, then the school is really redacting or constricting on what they can offer. Well, then that also, what really it takes away what differentiates us from surrounding schools. And then the next part is, well, why would you want to come to Monticello? Well, then you have an issue with impacting home prices to the negative. So there is a risk that even if it doesn't pass, while some people might say, hey, we're saving some money, it might impact the housing prices a lot larger than what this increase would be. So you have to look at it from that lens as well.
So this chart just had some examples of different values of homes and what the tax impact would be, what would be coming off, what's being revoked, what would be added, what's the net change, what's the annual net change, and what's the monthly net change. But there's a spot on our website where you could put your actual home value on there to see what the tax impact would be. And the next slide talks about the district's school levy. And when I do our truth in taxation hearing, I like to categorize our school levy like it's a pie. There's 30 pages of formulas that tells us what our school levy will be. Just because more homes are being built, that doesn't mean we get more levy. Each home or business is a slice of this pie, and depending on your market value determines how big or small your pie is. So if more homes are being built, we're just cutting up more pieces of the pie. The only way we could supersize this pie is with a vote, a school or a voter approved vote, whether it's operating levy, which we're doing this November. In 2015, we had two questions. One was a bond question where we did some building improvements and had our multi-purpose stadium, and we also had an operating levy. But this time around, we're just having an operating levy. So like I said, we can only supersize this pie if we have a successful vote. I think we can go to the next slide, Gavin. And we talked a little bit about the ballot question. So it's very strict. There's an attorney that has to draft this language. And this question talks about what's the revenue being generated. So what's the amount per pupil that it's going from, the 775 to the 1,550 per pupil. That's not what your tax impact is. That's 2 slides ago with that table. This is saying what's the revenue being generated.
City today, and it was pretty cool to hear the city saying, because they are one of the precincts. So if you're in Monticello, the precinct here for early voting is right at our Monticello Community Center. If you're in Monticello Township, if you're in Silver Creek, Otsego Township, Becker Township, or Big Lake Township, early voting is Wright County Courthouse, a government center. And so there's early voting going on right now from the 19th to November 3rd. We've been trying to do a lot of information. I will say that I feel very responsible for the last 2 failed operating levies. I took the guidance of a survey company who said that our families loved our district and thought that it was one of the best surveys they had seen when they called their 500 people. And I took that as the ticket to be quiet. And we're not quiet this time. And we have, like I said, 70 presentations. We are going to be out there everywhere and making sure that we have conversations with as many people as we can, as many different populations as we can. We want ideas. We want to hear from you. We don't want to miss a spot. We believe in this so much for our kids and for our community's future. really worried about the community's future. So this is how you can not only find where to vote on our website, but you can also keep up to date with the new things that we're putting out there. We're putting out, Gavin is really talented in taking information that we want to highlight and making videos that are more short and hopefully are maybe to the modern day way of learning. The people in the district say I would write too long and too much, so we're trying to do it in like short little bursts. But next slide, Gavin. Besides election, you've seen a lot of things here tonight and tools that we've provided. Including that calculator that you can guide people to so they can figure out what their tax impact would be so they don't get freaked out by the levy question itself. You have a district levy brochure. We have 2 mailings going out. One was mailed this week, and then another one will be mailed next week, and that's this one. So the first one you get is the formal one, the official notice that we have to do by legalities. And that one went out first, and then this one will follow it next week. And besides that, we're going to continue getting out across the community, making sure that we listen and get into spaces that we haven't thought of. Your voice matters, and it's really, these are our kids, it's our community, and it's our schools. It always has been. We're proud of our slogan that was developed, Superintendent Jim Johnson, but every kid, every day. We really try to live by that, and we try lots of different innovative ways to reach children so that we're not doing maybe exactly what was done 20 years ago, how maybe I learned when I was in school, because we've realized that the best practices are gearing us towards a lot more hands-on type of activities. So there's been a lot of changes in the last, I'd say 3 to 5 years in education here in Monticello. But we're proud of those changes because they serve kids. Right. Just open it up for questions and question and answer, sharing ideas, concerns, worries. We have 3 board members here now. I'd like Mary to introduce herself as well. If you could, Mary, introduce yourself.
Sure, if you'd like. Hi, I'm the newbie. I'm Mary Bartell, and I actually grew up in the area. I grew up in Foley, and I have always gone to public school. I went to St. Cloud State. And my kids have gone to public schools and public colleges. My husband went to U of M, and all my brothers and sisters, and there's a lot of them. We all went to public school. I truly believe that public school is the silver bullet. And I don't want to take a whole lot of time, but having lived in Fergus Falls and Foley and Brainerd, and now here in Monticello, I see where if you don't invest in the schools, you don't get the businesses to come to town. And so if you want to keep a good business community, you've got to have good schools. So I'm going to ask a question of you guys. Do you think we're asking for too much?
No, you're not asking for enough,
I agree.
not in any way, shape, or form.
I agree.
I'm very concerned. Thank you, Lori, for talking about some of the things at high school. I think there's a lot of things missing, though. The career tracks are taking care of another group of kids, but there's still a lot of kids being missed, even with what you proposed in your career tracks. You have to be strong from day one in your schools, starting at the bottom. And I see a lot of deficiencies. And so you can talk about test scores in many different ways, okay? But they are indicators of things. We're not doing well with our test scores. That's indicating a problem. I'm never hearing any solutions, okay? I came here tonight looking for specifics of how we were going to get better. Because in the world of education, if you're not getting better, you're going backwards. Okay? You can't just maintain The students that are coming through our schools deserve the absolute best. And we have to give them the best because they're going to compete with the best when they walk out the doors of our schools. And so when I hear the words, we just want to maintain, it doesn't sit well with me because it's not going forward. It's not giving the students what they need. And so there are specifics here that are lacking in it. And again, thank you, Lori, for finding some things, but again, it left out a lot. And through the middle school and the elementary schools, there's things that need to happen there. And I'm not seeing the answer to any of that here. Okay? I really wanted specifics. There was more generalities than specifics. I've had a lot to say about schools over the years, especially when I walked off of the board and how important they were. This does not get us where our kids deserve to be. And that's my biggest problem with it, is they deserve much better. The one question I had, Eric,
What's that?
one question I had,
Yeah.
and I was writing, so I may have, please define this better for me. There was a comment about this would be good for 5 years. You're asking for money for 10 years. What happens after 5?
I think it's with any forecast model. I'll let Tina answer if she wants to add on to this. But when you think of forecasting out, I mean, as a person who as a family member, making a 5-year budget plan is a plan that we can make sure that happens. We get that the levy is out there for 10 years, but we have to be careful what we say. We're going to try make that 10 years and be able to do exactly what we've done. And I'm all about doing some camps coming up here, and I will do those after the election in November to be able to showcase the things that we are doing, because tonight was just about a snapshot. And we are ready to dive into the things that we have implemented that are best practices and that will pay their dividends for our students and their test scores and just who they are as human beings. I just sat down with 6 seniors who are watching an adaptive soccer game and cheering students with disabilities on. And the future of our society is really bright because of the children that you guys are raising. And I'm really proud of our kids. And so test scores are on the have been on our ballot inside of our school district in administration to make sure that we are keeping them a priority, and we are building all best practices to make sure that we're going to see the fruits of those improvements. And so we will do some camps where people can come and take a look behind the scenes and see both the career pathways, see some of the education tracks for college bound, take a look in elementaries and the things that we're doing. Take a look at how we're meeting the kids' social emotional needs so that they're ready to learn, because everybody's coming to a different spot, and we're meeting those kids and trying to move them along. So I look forward to that. And then now getting back to your second question, just making sure Tina has space to talk a little bit more.
Yeah, so with the budget committee, again, they really wanted to look at what families could afford. Inflation and rising prices are affecting everybody, not just schools, it's businesses, it's everybody at the grocery store. It's all over the place. So the board with the budget committee wanted to be mindful of what we could get past. Yes, it's supposed to be for 10 years, and legislation at the state level is they only set their budget for 2 years. Sometimes on the off year, they'll add more money for school funding, but you never know what we're going to get every 2 years. Maybe we'll see more, maybe not, because we know the budget outlook's not so great at the state level. And we also don't know what's going to happen at the federal level. But we just knew hopefully what we could control and what we could do within a 5-year period, and to get some reprieve from going out all every 2 years to the voters, like what could we manage and afford across, the school and the public as well.
Especially coming on the backside of failing two operating levies. I mean, that's a tricky space to be in for the board. And I think navigating that, while we wish that everybody in the community believed like Scott, it's not the case, and it hasn't, and the history would show that it wasn't the case. And so trying to find that palatable amount was very tricky for our board.
Especially since the last two failed.
Yeah. But we love your answer. It would sure help. Money doesn't fix things, but it does make some things easier. Obviously, we all have our own opinions about the state financing model and some of the windfall education money that came, according to media, 2 years ago. After the first year of the biennium, we might have saw a slight reprieve, but in the second year of the biennium, we were already a loser with some of the funding that came in comparison to our budget. So it wasn't exactly how it was reported, and I don't want to get political or talk about state financing and things like that, because I want to respect, we live in Minnesota. I'm proud to live in Minnesota. I'm proud to live in Wright County. I'm proud to live and partner with Wright County officials and Monticello city officials. And I think by, keeping that better together model is how we'll go further. And those, yeah.
Okay. I heard you ask too about education and where we're at that way, and that's something that we do track. Obviously, at the board level, you're very well aware of that when you were on the board, and we have seen a decline, and we did just get brand new curriculum, and I know Eric didn't really talk about it, but we do have new science-based reading curriculum that is going into year 2 right now. We're working on new math curriculum right now. And so there is the curriculum cycle of new curriculum coming in and out, and what is going to be effective with our learners today. And so that is something that is new, that is, we experienced something, when I got on the board, we were in COVID. And we experienced something that was brand new, that we've never done before, that we've never had before as a school system. And there was steep decline in our test scores because of that. And it's going to take time to work our way out of that. And that also includes, we knew going into it, we needed the new curriculum, which we have now. But that was prior to COVID. We knew that we were looking into new curriculums there. And so those are some things as a school district that have been done, and we're looking to see great numbers this year. We have some numbers that have been increasing, but with any new curriculum, there is a period of time that the teachers need to even learn the new curriculum, to administrate it, to, I don't know the right verbiage to use, but there's a time period there where there's a learning curve where they've got to figure that piece of it out. And so that was the first year, and now we're in our second year now. And so I do hear you. Test scores, we have to have a way of measuring our effectiveness. I 100% agree with, if you're not going up, you're going down. I own a business in town, and it's just my same philosophy that way too. And so I completely understand that and your concern. And it's something that the board is also watching, and is something that our superintendent's rated on.
Not only am I rated on it, but we do have, this year, we've implemented extra work sessions to look at data of our students. So we're drilling down to student data to make sure that, that not only are our grade levels talking about how their instruction is impacting students, but we're getting down granular to the school board so that they can see it. Something that will be, we've done here in our district before, but we're adding sessions to make sure that we're all speaking the same language, and we have the in-depth knowledge of what's going on.
And one thing that wasn't mentioned was how proud I am of our admin team for all of the grants they've gone out and got in the last couple of years as well. that has provided us with additional funding to help in certain areas, to give more support to kids that need support, and has really filled some of those gaps because we've had the 2 failed referendums. Now, the one thing that's clear is that grants aren't forever money, so it squeaked us by, but, you know, coming back, it's the 3rd time we've come back now for a referendum telling our community we need more financing in order to keep up. And, you know, we're not going to dig into all of the mandates that the school has incurred, from state mandates to federal mandates, but there's not the funding there to sustain those mandates either. So the school has also incurred all of that on top of not keeping up with inflation money. And so they've gotten really creative. You've seen how lean our administrative team is. And on top of that, they're doing all of this work above and beyond in order to try to provide for our students right now with our current financial state. And so I get what you're saying, we're not asking enough. I 100% agree with that. However, our community has voted no now twice. And so we have to just ask for what we need for right now to get us by, and make sure that we're fully educating our community. And maybe that's a piece of it. I feel like we're doing a much better job now than we have I was around for the last referendum, and we didn't do any of these engagement pieces, and that's largely because we did the calls that typically happen with a referendum, and the surveys and the asking and putting information out there for those that were seeking the information, but we weren't as proactive as we are now on making sure we're going out to groups of people and educating and getting out to the communities, and even asking, as you guys sit here too, if there's any other ways you think we can get out and talk to people to educate them on where we're at. But I am darn proud of our school system, and what we've done with what we have is absolutely incredible. When you look at it, how many dollars in grants? $4 million in grants, and that's not sustainable. That's money that won't necessarily be there, or that won't even be able to be applied for again. But it's helping provide the experience for our students that they absolutely need right now. And outside of COVID, the need for more social, emotional, Sarah's here right now, and can maybe even talk more about that, but those needs as a district have increased more than they've ever been before as well.
And I'll maybe unpack it a little bit, because you heard a lot at a macro level, and I can speak to it at a micro, at a building level. And it's a direct answer maybe to Scott's question, but maybe it gives even a bigger peek behind the curtain, because as you listen to all of the things that are happening, when I talk about career and college pathways, it really is that career and college readiness. That's a big umbrella that we live in, or we're trying to create for students. But as we look at all of the layers that we're trying to provide for kids, it's everything from more attendance process and procedures to get kids into our building. It's more intervention programming academically than we've ever had, I think, at the high school in my recent history. And that goes from very specifically reading and math, and giving skills, backfilling skills that kids come to us and data is showing that they're missing. We've never had the multi-tiered layers of support that we do at this time. We've never had as robust instructional and professional development as we've had in the last handful of years to really give kids you've heard a curriculum, you've heard budget, you've heard all of the pieces. The recipe is there, but now we're adding that piece with the collaborative approach with getting our staff to really high levels of rigor, understanding who our students are as learners, using data platforms to look at that, to say, how do we make our content accessible, equitable, and reachable for all kids? Because they don't all come to us with the same set of skills. We've never had as much student support that we're really trying to backfill not only the transition, the executive functioning. What does it look like when I'm an 8th grader transitioning to the high school? How do I manage this big building? We've got really defined programming that gives that tool and those tools to students. Again, I'm talking from a high school lens. And so, Scott, to your question, but also like what is it layered? It's a multi-step, multi-tiered, lots of things happening that it's easy for me to point to that very first slide that says show all the great things that are happening in the hands-on, the activities, the events, the things that kids are doing. But the back end work that we're working very hard to get kids what they need so that they are prepared to learn, grasp their learning, and then either make gains, accelerate, whatever it is. That's what we're trying to do at a very micro level at the high school. I won't speak to any other building, that's not my lane. But I think just knowing that there's many, many pieces that say get to the test score, get to the grad requirement. We've got our ALP has been brought back into our high school. We know that kids that were off track for graduation couldn't be in a remote location. They had to come back into us and have access to all of the services. We've got online programming that we've never had as robust or diverse as we have this year because it's demanded of us from our students. We did not add new staff. We did not go out and ask for more money from the district or the board. We looked at how we could handle that internally and diversify. And again, it's a really complex system, but if we don't find those ways to continue to be innovative, get kids to that place, get them in front of us, give them what they need, and meet them where they are at socially, emotionally, academically. Again, an 8th grader transitioning versus a 12th grader transitioning out. There's a whole continuum of what that 14 to 18-year-old looks like, and we're truly trying to fill in all of the holes that we know that may be there or enhance what they want to go into post-high school life. Am I missing anything else? And I appreciate your comments, Scott, that it's easy. There's a lot of things unsaid. You're right. There are a lot of things unsaid, but there's a lot of things that are happening that are really, really impactful because we don't have a fixed product that comes to us. We are truly in the business of humans. I know you know that. We're trying to put all of the layers in place so that we give every kid what they need once they walk through our doors and help them just feel confident, excel academically, thrive socially and emotionally, and find their place within our people and with each other.
Spot to, be able to share too that that was one of the biggest bright spots that we celebrated was their attendance, literally from decades of 30 to 50% attendance to in the 80%. And we're striving for 90 to 95% for all students because if you're wanting to come to school, there's that curiosity for learning that's going to be happening. And so our ALP and the decisions that were made at the high school level to and re-engage them and hold the expectations high, but yet give them the supports that they might need in reading and math. Our EL support specifically, English language learners, we can physically see the support that we've added to be able to help students who are struggling. And that's when Ms. Hanson's talking about multiple layers. That's what it is. It's making sure you have the students who need accelerated higher level classes, and then also the kids who are reading below grade level. We have the supports built now for those students. And a lot of times over the years, those were the positions that we've seen cut. And instead, we've made those priorities and then, looked at numbers of classes and maybe the diversification at staff. So instead of running classes with 4 in certain languages for years, we've been able to do online services for those classes and so that it's not a person in front. And then just really diversify in how we're being able to reach every learner. It's a complex system and more complex now than ever because there are so many choices out there. So just think about education, for example. I feel like I'm probably one of the oldest in the room, but when I was a kid growing up, there were 2 schools. And most cities and most towns had 2 schools. They had a public education and a Catholic school. And so now that's not even touching all the different options out there. There are so many different options for kids, and we want to make sure that our option and the relationships that we built with families showcase that we're still the spot to come back to, even if you try some different things. We partner with our homeschool. So a lot of school districts would shy away and not have their superintendent have a relationship with them. As superintendent, I send them newsletters. I tell them when the hockey rink is open for skating all day when it's sitting there so they can come and skate. Our principals have led meetings this year to talk about the pathways that they can serve part-time students. And while we've done that in the past, we are really trying to accelerate so that we develop relationships with people to come and take our orchestra, because our fine arts are probably one of the best around, and come and take our STEM class at the middle school so that you actually get to experience some professions that you might have skill in, or you might generate an interest that carries over. So we're proud of the things that we are building, but it is complex and it is different. 8 years ago, I called all the counselors in and said, I want an online system, because I could see in the future that, and this was before COVID, and they couldn't wrap their head around that. I took those administration at the time, it wasn't Ms. Hanson, took them down to Hutchinson and said, this is what we need, we're behind. We took a bus with the mayor, Jim Thayers, the chamber. We just made sure that our city knew that we needed to do this at our high school. And so there's so many things that we've seen that we've needed to do, and we've done those things. And we are on a map of huge improvement, even through maybe some challenging both times as a society with COVID and stuff like that. But on the backside of that, we've moved fast, actually, and I'm proud of those things.
So you mentioned you could drive 30 miles and the state is funding students in that school district different than they are here. That's something new to me. I just always was under the impression the state funded everybody equally. Are you able to elaborate maybe a little bit why that happens? And then just as a quick side note, I've heard from a couple of people that I know that live in town. I'm glad you're doing these engagements versus the last couple of times, because I've heard from a couple of different people who apparently are still upset from 20 years ago when the district built some new schools and then one of them got shut down or something like that. It wasn't in operation, but you guys had planned ahead and now they're being utilized. But it sounds like there's still some resentment in the community from that, potentially, and which is sad that, can't look at it in the long term of what, and see how that was a good thing. But, so yeah, just maybe, like I said, this is a good thing that you're doing it. Hopefully we don't have to come back in 5 years and add on to this, because I'm in agreement. The more we can do to fund our schools, the better. I went to Hopkins. We had a shop class, first place I ever learned how to change the oil in my truck. I don't know if we have anything like that here. I don't know at what point, maybe even like a shop class for wood and things like that. So I like that you want to do more for those that just want to get a 2-year degree. That's what I did. I know test scores are important, and not every kid is great at taking tests. And there are plenty of those kids who have turned into very wealthy adults and they failed through going through school. So, I'm not knocking the whole test scores. I believe that they're important, but getting them ready, even if they're not doing great in the test scores, getting them ready so they can move on to the next level where they're going to excel beyond tests is important as well. So
Ensure that we look at the whole child, at lots of different programs during the school day and after school to have a diverse wide variety of connections for kids, whether it's shop classes, industry, standard welding shops now, partnership with Wright Technical Center in Buffalo, so anything that we don't have, we can get to spark their interest, and then we have buses that have been going over to Wright Tech for years. That's where they're getting their automotive, but our programming is becoming more and more diverse, so that as kids change and they need different engagement level, like we used to learn in rows, right? And teacher, imparted knowledge on children. And now it's really the facilitation of learning and challenging students and trying to diversify your curriculum for multiple needs inside the classroom. That didn't happen. Even like right now, like how we're preparing our students to be on an education track. Some kids say they want to go into education. So one of our classes is an education class. Well, we're giving kids a taste to go like teach lessons and teach them how to teach lessons in our elementary schools. Well, I didn't have that till my third year of college. And now I'm seeing two kids who teachers are telling me that I have to come and watch deliver a lesson because they're so amazing. And so like those are all those hands-on real experiences, apprenticeships that equate to a stronger society. And I believe here in Monticello we're creating a stronger society. And I think our test scores are going to come because I know we are implementing best practices, new curriculum. And I do want to get everybody some peek behind the scenes so they can come through and see some of the things that we're doing so that we're not just talking about it, we're able to do that. So after the levy, I'll make sure that that is something that we reenact here as some tours of our schools.
And to add on to that, when you talked about years ago, they have these wood shop classes, machine classes. I had that as well. We have welding, machine shop, wood shop. But if you notice in the slide, there was that decoupling in the early 2000s of the state funding on there. Well, why we went back to 2003 is where they changed that formula. So as the schools aren't getting more dollars to keep up with all the increased mandates and the expenses, that's where you saw a decline in some of those offerings on there with the dollar amount. And then the second one is on the test scores, like kids can opt out on there, but then those scores impact the net score as well on there when they don't take them. Yeah, they were doing that for still in there right now. So there's a request to take that out to correct that so that zero is not applied, but that's still not approved by the legislature on there. So
Yeah, so we need a way to measure to see how we're doing, what way we're going as a district, which, testing's great. I have a daughter who doesn't thrive in the testing environment either, and she's smart and she's brilliant, but, how intelligent she is isn't going to necessarily show up on a test score. But she always comes home, she's like, Mom, I don't want to take that test. So-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so is not taking it. And my mind's just blown at how many people are not taking the test. And I said, no, welcome to life. You test out on a lot of things in life. You're going to take the test. It's okay. It's not your favorite. What's your favorite little hard candy? We'll go to the store and make it fun and exciting, but there's a lot of things in life that you get tested on. And so I'm doing her a disservice, I personally feel, by not encouraging her to do that and to overcome some of those challenges that she has. But the funding formula is unequitable, like you had mentioned. We are not funded the same here in Monticello per student as students are funded, let's say, in Maple Grove. And so we don't have control of that funding formula. It's very complex. That goes into that funding formula. Maybe Tina can even speak to that a little bit. But I went to a meeting when I first got on the board with our representative. It was in Buffalo, and it was in our area. It's Monticello, Elk River, Big Lake, Becker, Buffalo, St. Michael for our representative that represents us, right? And they get one vote. We have one rep. Well, in Minneapolis, they have 12. That funding formula is never going to change as of right now. And so our rep made sure they let us know, we've done all of this work and we've presented all these presentations saying, why it's not a fair funding formula and why there's certain areas that are not getting the funding that they should be getting. And they said at the end of the day, when it comes down and we vote on it, we're outvoted. We're never going to win in changing that funding formula. And so then it comes back to our local community. Do I think it's fair? No, I don't. But it is the situation we're in, and I think it's important that people are educated and know. And it's interesting, too, that you say, you know, your neighbors. I just had a gentleman come in my business the other day, and he was like, I'm upset because we voted the last referendum that went through in 2015, and we were tricked, and you guys built this stadium. I'm like, well, there's no trickery. You know, Tina just talked about it, that there was a bond that was there that was for the stadium. There's 2 questions that was voted on, and one of them was the stadium, and I just told him, I said, huh?
I remember that, right. Because I knew the referendum for the funding of the school was going to not make it, but people would pay for the stadium.
Yep.
Because for whatever reason, sports are more important than education for people. And if you want to put hurt on people and help them honestly learn, then it's got to be painful to the community, and it's unfortunate to the children. But when you start making parents pay the full price, maybe they'll help start funding the school. Because the sports shouldn't be it's $1 million, right? Is that what we're talking about? $1 million for sports? Mm-hmm. $1 million for education is great, but then you're screwing over children, and that's not fair either in the sports. But if I could have $1 million going to education and parents paying for the sports, I want the money going into what helps the school. And those that elect to have your children in sports, unfortunately, you know, like Eric said, you tend to get that reprieve. You know, right now I'm getting into this whole aspect of having to pay for soccer now, finding how quickly expensive it is just to play soccer.
So it's interesting. So I'm a coach here in the district too, and I agree, like, education is important. Education's first. As a coach, we say that, right? Like, if you aren't passing with certain grades, you don't get to come to practice. You stay afterwards and you get some additional help because education's the first thing. But sports provides so much more than just a sport, right? It's that social, emotional interaction and learning. And you know, I can just speak for our swim team because I'm part of the coaching staff there. And we help create, not just within our school districts, but in that sporting atmosphere. Our job is to create well-rounded individuals and athletes too that are going to be able to go out into the workforce too. So they're learning skills there as well that they're not necessarily learning within the school system. But what I will tell you is that if we don't have sports, we will lose a lot of people from our school district. And so sports, you had just mentioned, is important. We could potentially lose those 1,000 students who decide to go elsewhere then to get their education so they can participate in a sport. And so I get what you're saying, the money, you know, it is $1 million, and it's something that the school board is definitely going to have to look at and consider when it comes to if we have to make additional budget cuts and where that money is going to be coming from. But I'll tell you, I told this individual who came in and was talking about the stadium that I myself live here in Monticello, and I am proud to say that as our stadium. You know, I'm proud to have nice things as a school district, and that's what I really think is, I hope that our community is proud that we take care of the nice things that we have. You know, we were talking about the swimming pool and how old it is, but I am proud of that swimming pool, and we take good care of it and do good maintenance, because at one time our community did invest in a nice swimming pool 40 years ago, right? And we've taken care of that, and that is my goal too with the stadium. You know, people had talked about our scoreboard and how much the scoreboard costs. Well, now that scoreboard is generating funds for our school district. The last 3 years has brought money now into the school district because of advertising on that scoreboard. And a lot of people don't understand that either. You know, and what does that look like when we build something nice and then maintain it, you know, for years to come, for future generations to use.
You guys have questions?
Yep.
I wasn't implying that we should take sports away. I'm just saying,
Pay that amount.
and
I get what you-
unfortunately, if we don't want to fund the school that helps pay for the sports, then unfortunately, I think parents need to start, and if that made people move to another school district because they had to cough up maybe another $700 for their kid to play a sport,
Well, 7 plus the 225, I get what you're saying, yep.
you know, it's a pretty big pet peeve over, you know, $750 to move your kid out of school. But like, I'm not saying get rid of sports. I had sports in junior high, and from what I understand, that's not an option anymore.
We have revenue neutral
Revenue, okay.
activities now from, that we run through community ed. So their seasons aren't as long as they used to be, but that we have some good offerings. And just so we don't leave this topic, I'm going to have Gavin pull up the schools, the funding resource that we get our data for. And just like, this is just the front page. And so this one's in alpha. You can sort it different ways, but the left column is the generated state aid. And then the special ed column, I haven't been talking about that because everybody's special education is different. But if we're going to just look at two columns to show that everybody does have different state aid, you can see, for example, you know, Annandale, their state generated aid is 8,900. If you go down, I saw one that was 13,000, but here's 12,000 for some of the outskirts, some of the more probably diversity is part of a mechanism. There's different pieces of the mechanism to dictate how much are coming to you. And then here's the voter-approved operating levy. So you can see numbers that are close to ours, and then you can see that, well, that one would be real close to ours. And you can see, you know, some 400 and 500. There's one 1,800.
Well, like in Ashby, tiny towns.
So it just shows that both the state aid is different per community, and obviously the voter-approved levy is different.
Yep, there's different state aids that come in. We get just over 40,000 because we have students identify as American Indian. And so depending on what your population is, you could get some American Indian aid. What you have for free and reduced population, that would generate compensatory revenue. So based on that percentage would determine what you get. Some of the metro schools, the top 25, they can levy as much as they need for long-term facility maintenance revenue. For the not top 25, we can only generate $380 per pupil to help our roofs and our parking lots. There's transportation sparsity, where if you're more, you know, outstretched and buses have to go long ways, you get some transportation sparsity revenue. Small schools, they get different revenue. So it's manning. We try to advocate in my position there's a general education aid, just put it on the main formula that everybody gets, not all these different little buckets and pockets of money.
So kind of getting off the financial topic, if you will, but, so my big concern is like, you guys are doing a great job at like getting the word out, but it is absolutely imperative that this passes. And so I think back to like, I grew up in St. Cloud. I graduated in 2007. And we were trying to pass levies when I was in middle school and high school. And we had a similar situation where there was going to be some major cuts if we didn't get a levy to pass. And we had several fail. And they started organizing high school and middle school students to go out with parents and teachers. And we started door knocking. And we had talking points. And it wasn't like, you know, they were exploiting us by any means. Like, we wanted to be there, you know, like we understood the topic. We understood that our sports were at risk. We understood that, you know, our music programs were at risk. And so I was in band, and I didn't want band to be cut, and I was in tennis, and I wanted to continue to be able to do my sports. And so we went and we started knocking, and it was really interesting to run into people in the community. We ran into a lot of old people who said, well, I don't have kids anymore. And I remember telling them, I'm like, well, one day I'm going to take care of you. So it's going to be imperative that you educate me now so that I can give you the best care later. And that was like super impactful for a lot of people. And I'll say I'm a healthcare provider now. So I just think that I feel strongly that if we could put some faces to this levy, if people had to open their front door and be like, all right, this 10th grader doesn't get to do basketball next year because his parents can't pay $1,000. So that basketball player isn't going to be at practice after school. They're going to be getting into trouble, and I'm going to be paying for it one way or another. I can either pay for it via the levy, or I can pay Wright County Sheriff to be monitoring the streets because we got a bunch of kids that aren't in sports anymore, or programs, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and that sounds like super doom and gloom, and I'm not trying to get there, but like, there's studies out there that show if you don't have kids in extracurriculars, they find other things to do. And I don't want to like put a negative spin on things, but it's something that the community should acknowledge, and it might motivate people who have the claim, well, I don't have kids, it doesn't impact me. It does impact you. It impacts the entire community. And so I'm just curious if there are any other thoughts or plans. I love the videos. I'm not active on Facebook, so I'm not sure what you're doing on that platform. And I like that you're hosting these things, but there's 11 of us here. Mm-hmm. I was like, I mean, you're all great people, but I was super disappointed when I walked in tonight. Like, clearly you thought you were going to have more people too. Like, I was really hoping that everybody else read the same email I read, and they're like, holy smokes, we should show up and like get involved, you know? And people aren't doing it. So like, how do we bring it outside of the videos, outside of the mailings? Like, how do we not give them the option to look away?
Can I answer part of that? Sure. Okay, and then I want you to add on to that. Let me give you a little hopeful part of that, and that is I, as the old person on this, I help out at the senior center, helped out with their tech issues, and I was at one of the farmers markets with Eric, and I was talking to an older lady about this, and she recognized me from the senior center, and I was mentioning to her about the levy, and she said, I already know about it. My granddaughter said I have to vote for this because she's at school. So one, there's some of the messages getting out that way. The other way is we're going to be going to the senior centers, and picking up people that way, at least the oldest, because you are right. No, you are absolutely, no, you hit the nail on the head. You hit the nail right on the head. It's that, because there's 2 points here, and one is if you look at the Minnesota legislator's website, the demographics show that only one household out of 11 has kids in school in Minnesota. So that's a big hurdle we have to get through. And then, I forgot the other one. See, old age. There was another point there. But, I did have somebody ask me, well, do you have any kids in the school district? And I said, no. But my granddaughter goes to Farmington. And so I hope that somebody down there will vote for her levy so that she can get taken care of, because I'm going to vote so that your granddaughter can get it here. And so there's a trade-off. You know, I don't have any grandchildren in this district, but I'm voting for it, so I want those kids. Because I used to teach at a 2-year college, technical careers, and I used to tell my students, I said, I want you to get really good education here because I want you to get really good paying jobs. Because I want you to have to pay really high taxes so that I can retire in a manner to which I can quickly become accustomed. So you hit the nail on the head. We have a lot of older folks that we need to reach, and I know that, Eric, you've got a great. But I wanted to give you some hope. But I know we've got better plans too, Eric.
Yeah, no, I think with the students, we had a group of students this summer that produced 2 videos with Gavin, and it was all student-led. And now, as far as student activity, I think our association work, when you're getting 70 meetings in across the district or across the community, we're getting into a lot of the youth sports, and I see that we have almost all of them endorsing with public announcements on direct announcements to their user groups. So I guess as far as the youth connection, we have the videos going on and then the youth associations that are endorsing, but we haven't, I think, considered the how to implore the young people to go door knock. I mean, I love the idea, and because you're right, when things have a face to them, it makes it so much more personal. We still have some time, so I'll have to think about how to look at that one.
I think the biggest reason why, because we agree we need to get out to the communities, and so right now what's on our schedule is we're doing informative meetings in certain communities where there's been somebody that said they would host a group of people at their house from their community that are their neighbors that we can just talk to in a bigger group. And so if you know any more of those or anybody that would like to host, we would love to add that to our schedule because we think that's a lot of bang for your buck, and then people are coming to get informed. The other piece is finding people that were willing to volunteer to do that. And so one of the things that we're growing right now is just even our PTOs and getting parents more involved within the schools because they're not. And so it is something that's different, and just getting the sheer volunteers outside of what our staff are already doing has been difficult.
Kind of like what you're saying, though, tonight. Sometimes the neighborhood parties have had 30, 26, 0, 4. So the neighborhood parties can be highly successful at 30 and having some students there, young people telling their story. We always make sure anytime you're around me, I have children tell their story. On Saturdays, one time a month, even when it's not operating levy, I do Money on the Move with Superintendent Olson, and we're in some space of the community having fun together. And I think those are the things that and those I've never, to be honest, I haven't had less than 30 in many months. We usually have we've had 100 when we were at the UMC. We've had 50. They're very highly attended, so I think the community feels connected with families and youth to us. But I don't know that we've explored that new concept that I really like. So, yeah. Yeah. I like old school. Yeah. Maybe some, sports teams and things like that. So yeah.
That was honestly one of
Great
the
idea.
thoughts. Back growing up, we went out as sports teams and we wore our stuff, and so people could identify us as the tennis team is coming through
Absolutely.
the neighborhood, trying to, and people will come at us with questions too. They'd be like, well, they'd want to know exactly what they're funding, and then they'd have, my husband's like, well, how did they get the stadium built? And I was like, that's typically a separate I didn't realize it was separate, but from past experiences, I was like, it's likely a separate ballot item, and sure enough it is. But there's a lot of people who are misinformed about that, and it would be an awesome opportunity to get facts out there and let people realize that we're not taking this money to put towards sports necessarily. We're just trying to stay afloat, maintain.
Yep.
Yes, maintain. Exactly. So.
Thanks.
Eric, I know I mentioned earlier about seeing if Walmart or Cub would allow you to be on their property, but the worst case is if they don't, even having, maybe your idea is really great. I do love it, trust me. But if you had students and or members of teams that they have a passion for this, being able to even be out on the public sidewalk and having signs or something, indicating, to vote for the levy, even if, maybe it'll get some people to talk to them, maybe it won't. But kind of getting it out there that, hey, there is an operating levy you know, and maybe just see if there's some engagements, you know, like that you can say, you know, that might be some interesting ideas too. But 100%, I mean, I have a neighbor kid going around right now trying to sell stuff for a field trip to Valley Fair here in a few months, obviously. And so if kids are willing to go out and do that for something like that, hopefully, you know, there's parents and I wouldn't necessarily make a 10-year-old go around because they're not going to understand this.
Right, right.
But if there's definitely some maybe 8th and high school kids, you know, that's a fantastic idea.
I think, well, hopefully you guys will see too, is like when we hear ideas, we're getting around to the staff each month. And when the staff share ideas, we've put as many as we can into fruition. So it's not just like the leadership of the administrators and they're running this levy. It's really everybody's voices. And so that's why you carve out space for nights like tonight. That's why you get to your staff with both weekly updates and monthly meetings. And they are sharing ideas, and we are imploring them immediately. So you'll see a very talented staff member who just is wanted to do things on their own time, and they're doing some videos about kids and people and that are generated solely through his creativity and brain, but investing in people, and he's just given it a whole new spin. It's not always on the levy, it's just about people, and I think that's what makes schools so special is all the different people inside. So yeah, we heard that wasn't an idea that we had, but then you hear it and then you try make it happen, and we're listening and making those things happen. So your voices are part of the whole levy. And that we'll all be proud together on November 4th, no matter what happens. Hard questions and hard conversations are what is part of the game. If you're not asking hard questions, then we're not engaged in probably any change. We were in one this morning, Ms. Hanson and I, that you know, some very hard questions, and people who said that they haven't voted before or haven't supported when we called them. We are doing 2,500 phone calls as well. And so, you know, we're getting out that way. But he said that he was a no to a maybe, and after this morning, and he asked tough questions, and we were able to show the facts and where we're at. And he announced in front of a group that was very influential that he had changed his mind because of the presentation. So it's every wave, every ripple, every question, every engaged community member makes a difference right now.
So if you're willing to volunteer, we will collect your information before you leave here. Yeah, yeah. All of it helps. It really does, you know, and feels good to have your guys' support too on this, and knowing like you need to do more and you need to ask for more. And right now we just need this to pass, and then we can move forward from there. But it's been difficult having our community vote no in the past. So that has been challenging. So any other ideas of what we can do or how to get more information out there? We'd love to hear it.